would like to make a slight tweak to the program in the sense that I know that THIBAUT KLEINER needs to leave, he hasn't got too much time, so he's here. Aura Sala is here, and then Philippe is here. So instead of starting from the member states, if people indulge me, we will do the Commission and Parliament segment first, and then we'll flip to the member states, if that's okay. I'm looking at Dariusz at the back. Well, you can tell me no, but... no, you can't. I wouldn't recommend it. Will you please, Aura and Thibaut and Philippe, come up? Thank you. So I'm delighted to have, of course, these wonderful people to help me take to the next stage of the discussion. The intention and the reason I had set it up in the way I did was that, of course, I can see also there is CLARA CHAPPAZ. CLARA, will you give us a few minutes because we want to do the Commission and the Parliament first because Thibaut has to leave. She's online. So the intention was, of course, we had the big summit in Berlin. The digital French-German summit, which was a huge event. And so I wanted to start by asking a number of member state representatives here, what is the follow-up? However, I think we will flip it slightly, and I want to go directly to what the Commission in various ways, and the Parliament, of course, are doing. Let me start with Thibaut. There's a lot of expectation on what you might say, and of course, I need to just publicly praise the fact that THIBAUT KLEINER has been the first that I'm aware of in DG Connect, in the Commission, who actually was the face of sovereignty. He came to our event in Parliament in 2024, and he was the first to speak publicly and approvingly about this stuff. So kudos to you. And what, of course, you are in the middle of is all of this cloud and data, and of course you're also aware of what's happening at some level on the Buy-European, the procurement directive. We can't have Nathalie Berger, she couldn't make it this morning, but I won't just put it on you to tell us all of that, but please do give us an update from your perspective on where we are.
Thank you very much, and I should correct you, the face of tech sovereignty is the Vice President, Henna Virkkunen. So just let the record be straight.
I stand corrected.
And the reason why I unfortunately have to go is to precisely meet her and discuss tech sovereignty, because she's very much interested in this, and this is a topic that she's going to bring forward in a few weeks, because a package on tech sovereignty is being prepared. End of March, beginning of April, we are finalizing proposals, and indeed one of the elements will be precisely to try and round the circle, make sure that we not only talk about sovereignty, and I would really like to praise the work that you personally, with also the group around Eurostack, has been doing. It's fantastic to see so much energy at the moment. I think something is happening. We see it from the Commission. Industry is not only waking up, it's realizing that partnering with foreign companies is not just good enough. And I would just point to what was discussed in Davos. I mean, when you see the way some of the US administration is describing Europe, as if we can only build working groups and we have no assets whatsoever, I think it's up to us to prove to the world that actually we have a lot of strength in Europe, not only in terms of industry and in terms of talent, but also in terms of organizing ourselves to make a difference and bring competitiveness at the forefront. So indeed, this tech sovereignty package is about several elements. The first one will be on the CHIPS Act 2. So we want actually to improve, what is already happening with CHIPS Act 1. We are already changing the course and reverting what was happening in terms of microprocessors. This is the heart really of sovereignty in terms of hardware. Today, we are not producing any AI chips in Europe. Maybe we should change this, because this is the future. Japan has done it. 40 billion euros investment into Rapidus, and they are on track to have also, advanced chips in Japan. We have the best labs, we have the best, research, and we have, very big opportunities, but we don't do it in Europe, so maybe the CHIPS Act 2 will be an opportunity to change that. A second big element will be on the Cloud and AI Development Act. I will not repeat what is in the Draghi report and other analysis. Basically, we import 260 billion euros every year from the United States in this area. We are depending for 80% of the market on non-European companies. Clearly an area where things should change, and we are putting together, a series of measures. It will be about research and innovation. It will be about facilitating the deployment of additional capacity so that we can really be serious about becoming an AI continent. And it will be about sovereignty. And that's very much what we are working on, trying to fine-tune our measures. Certainly public procurement will be an essential element. It can be a core demand for European providers. And also we want to make sure that we advance on other elements so that, also sovereignty is defined, because we have today a lot of what we call sovereignty washing, where people say, I'm sovereign and so on, but actually there are no criteria and they cannot guarantee that your data is safe, and actually a foreign government will not have a possibility to access it. So we will try to put some order here, to harmonize conditions, and also to create really a new dynamism in the market in favor also of European providers. The key now, what we are trying to find out is this enough? Should we not look also at sovereignty criteria for other types of entities beyond the public sector? We are curious to also have views at this stage. But then in the package, I would like to insist, because it's actually the open source week at the moment, that we will publish also an open source strategy together with actually Digit. So I'm very happy that Philippe is here today. We see open source as a possibility really to leapfrog, to cover the gaps in our value chain, and also to create a mechanism whereby Europeans that are very often smaller entities dispersed in networks can actually work together towards excellence. We have good examples where on AI we have leading open source models. We have the same in cloud. I think we can do more. We have alternatives actually based on open source in Europe that are just waiting to scale and to get attention. So in essence, I think that the package is coming up quite nicely. There will be also the EU Inc., so the 28th regime, that should help very much to organize also that startups and scale-up have an easier way forward. The Innovation Act is also around the corner, also to put some mechanism there towards SMEs. And procurement in general, I think, will be an instrument, not just in tech, but overall. So in essence, I think competitiveness and tech sovereignty is the name of the game right now in the Commission. We need also to make sure that our digital rule books is made simpler. That's why we have also the EU Omnibus. But as I said, I think that there is a momentum right now. So up to us to seize it, and up to us also to work together between the public sector and the private sector to accelerate. And I think here member states have a key role to play. And I will conclude by saying that we are very happy to see through this European Digital Infrastructure Consortium, the EDICS, there as well, great momentum on open source, on platforms, on LLM. So really, it's an interesting moment. It's not going to be easy, but I think that if we are determined and if we work collectively, there is really a chance to come out very nicely out of this opportunity.
I'll get back to many of these things. The public and private working together is particularly important, but thank you for that. Tour d'horizon. Let me turn to Aura Sala, who I'm very grateful to see here. Thank you for making it today. You are one of the most visible and articulate voices from Parliament, really pushing the need for sovereignty, for Europe doing their thing. There's been just in the last few days the INI report on sovereignty approved. Will you give us your own vision of where things are, what's stopping us from going faster, and what can the Parliament actually do?
Thank you so much for having me here today. Listening to the Commission, I'm super worried because he's bypassing the Parliament in everything now. I'm sorry, but none of this will happen without actually the legislators. The Commission is a bunch of civil servants doing an excellent job, but the lawmakers are in the Parliament and in the Council. And this is the problem that they have been forgetting all along and why things got so wrong. You need to remember that the Parliament actually have the legislative power. And you need to lobby us a lot, please. And one thing we need to make sure now is that we get these US hyperscalers out from this market. I will be very harsh. Finland, Sweden, and many other member states will be down by their public sector in an hour if Microsoft uses their kill switch. At the same time, we are making sure that we are buying fighters from the US. We are completely reliant on US, and we need to remember that these US companies can anytime cut access to their services. No one will miss Meta, Google, Amazon, Apple, bye-bye. But with Microsoft, there is a huge problem. I would say that Microsoft is like a spaghetti. When you take a one, it comes all together, right? And one important factor there is interoperability and standards. Apple and Microsoft did it super well. They have the standards and they have interoperability. Buy MacBook or buy iPhone, you will buy the whole family, right? This is something that we are missing in Europe. And this is something where the Commission should focus on next. And not just pushing acts. There is no such a thing as an act in the EU legislative toolbox, to be honest. Just kidding here a little bit, but I try to push the Commission to spell out what we actually need. In the Parliament, we will allocate the files on Cybersecurity Act, Digital Omnibus, and also on Networks Act this week. And there you will find out who are the lawmakers dealing with these files. And my points are, we need to deregulate, not only simplify. We need to really now look into the GDPR, enable use of data, metadata, traffic data, anonymous data. But we cannot do this for these American hyperscalers. We need to make sure that we do this for our own European companies. So at the same time, we need to start treating these US and Chinese companies as third-party countries. What we do with this is we are having trade deals, right? We are using tariffs for all our raw materials, critical raw materials. Why don't we treat data as a critical raw material? We are giving that for free for these companies. And it's just a PR stunt from Microsoft saying that, oh, we are Europeans now. Come on, guys, we all know that you are not Europeans. You are under the US law, no matter what. You can use the kill switch whenever. So Europe, wake up. We need to get rid of these companies here. Not get rid in that sense that, of course, when there is a reciprocity, we do deals. We do trade, right? But now it's not the case. They just collect our data for free. They import that to the US and they develop their services. Huawei and TikTok, they are developing our data for free to China, and China is helping Putin in Ukraine. Come on. And at the same time, we are trying to help Ukraine. How naive we must be. So, kicking the hyperscalers out, enabling data in our market, harmonizing the market. I'm sorry, but in 28 regime/EU Inc., there needs to be also taxation, labor law, and there needs to be much more flesh in that proposal. Much more flesh in that proposal. And my final point here is that we need to enable our own companies to scale and be brutal. Because when you are looking at what Trump is doing right now, he's not respecting us if we are just bowing to him, right? He wants to make good deals. So let's make our companies enable this, that they will grow to be at the global state. And it means that, please help me with one thing. This is my final thing that I will say, but you need to help me now. We have cloud services. We have cybersecurity companies. We have open source models like Linux, right? But what we are missing is the software for consumers on top of that. Find me a company who can produce that in Europe. And I know that it requires interoperability and standardization. And that's something that I hope that the Commission will work on. But please find me that kind of a software company who can do this kind of a customer's software on top of open source models.
Thank you. Thank you. Much to follow up on. Just as a general question, you emphasize the role of the legislators, and that's fine. What is missing from the perspective of industry when you are rightly saying we need to brutally grow European assets? is actually demand. Because the supply side is there saying, well, we've got stuff to sell, and where are the customers? And we will discuss it further in the course of today, and indeed in this panel. On the public demand side, of course, the Commission and the Parliament can mandate some form of procurement, European bias, if you like. The private demand is the bulk of it. 80% of the demand for these services is from the private sector. What do you see as the most useful way to shift, to move the food in using Dietmar's language, so that private sector demand, all these huge industrial complexes we have in Europe, who spend billions on American digital services, actually start spending them on European ones. Can the Parliament do anything?
Absolutely can. We team up with the Commission. Public Procurement Directive. Let's make that as a regulation. Why? Because then public sector would start using European technology and make sure of the interoperability and standardization. It helps enormously if German government, Irish government, Finnish government would stop using Microsoft. They are increasing their prices this summer in Finland only 20–30%. Come on! It's enormous amount of money. So in public sector, let's start choosing European technology as much as it is possible. And then we enable this so that we would have a package deal on cyber security, cloud and software. So it's easier for private sector then also choose these kind of package models that we would create with the public sector. So I would say that that's a quick thing that we could do as lawmakers.
Very good. Thank you so much. Let me turn to Philippe. Philippe, it's so nice of you to be here. Of course, Philippe is in charge of procurement of digital services for the Commission. And of course, the question you inevitably face on your daily working life is, where do we put the money? Where do we actually do the procurement for the Commission? How do you think of it? How do you see things changing?
So, it's a fair question, indeed, and I'm happy to be here to represent the CIO perspective, because, as you said in your introduction, policy can't solve this, basically. It's a demand question. And what is the role of a CIO? What is my role? What do we have to do, like any CIO in the Commission? Our job is basically to deliver reliable, scalable, trustworthy, secure, resilient digital services that make the organization work. That is our job, and that's not different from any other CIO in the world. Where the Commission CIO job is slightly different is indeed that Thibaut and I, we share the same political boss, Heina Virkkunen, and that there is also the question then, okay, what is the Commission doing to show the way? Inherently, any CIO has to balance, on the one hand, risk and cost with delivering the services that are required. So this is a question that is not about ideology, it's a question about risk and cost, and about procurement, because people need to buy the stuff. And from that perspective, you see that digital sovereignty, also in the Commission, it's not a black and white issue, because risks are very different. And I'm giving you two extreme examples. The official journal. You know the official journal, that is basically what publishes the law. Do we care about sovereignty? I would say very much, because if you need American companies to make European law, maybe we have an issue. We also have a system to order the water and the coffee for meetings. Do I care about sovereignty for that application? Couldn't care less. It's a very different risk profile. So that's the balancing act that we have. Now, our starting point in the Commission is not very different from any other company in Europe, because we have a large proprietary non-European stack. It's a bit like the joke of the traveler that gets lost in the countryside, and he stops because he sees a farmer there working in the field, and he says, look, I want to go there to that city. Can you show me the way? And the farmer looks at him and says, oh my God, if you want to go there, I wouldn't start from here. that's digital sovereignty for us as well. So what are we concretely doing? So actually, the first thing that we did is to transform a political objective into a number of principles that are applicable. And the 5 principles that we use in practice is, first of all, we prioritize resilience. If we make choices, we take resilience as a prime concern, because indeed this is a way to manage risks that things are being shut down, for instance, one of the risks that we're saying. We try to mitigate also the dependency on proprietary solutions. You can do that in 2 ways. You can do that by having more open source, what Thibaut mentioned, or in case open source is not the solution for that particular area, you can also base yourself on multiple vendors and have avoid lock-in situations. Diversify supply chains is another thing. Reduce the dependency on operators that are under non-European control for sure as well. The last one here, because I heard the word as well, prioritize interoperability. And that's also a message to you in the industry. We need stuff to function together. And yes, the strong point from Microsoft is that it all fits seamlessly together. So if small companies come to me with a brilliant product, that's great. But what do I do with that? It has to fit within an ecosystem. So I want to see companies work together, partner up to deliver end-to-end solutions, because that is what CIOs expect. Now, one last thing also on procurement here. Procurement is for me key in driving digital sovereignty forward. But public procurement and sovereignty are at this moment in time, I would say, not a happy marriage. They are more sort of a difficult marriage and a marriage of convenience. And why is that? Because of 2 reasons. First of all, we can't discriminate between companies that are on the European market. And we talk about the hyperscalers, but I'm sorry, the hyperscalers from a public procurement perspective, they are Luxembourgish or Irish companies. They are not American companies because they are present on, yes, that's just factually the case. And it's illegal to discriminate in the current setup. And the other element is that we also have to buy in the public sector the best product at the lowest price. That's our obligation that we need to do, which makes us a bit spoiled, I admit, because if you want to buy more European stuff, you have to deal with smaller companies that don't know exactly how it works, and we are spoiled, and we will also have to change a bit our mentality in the public sector to bridge that. Now, very concretely, what did we do to drive our agenda forward? Well, in October, we launched a big public tender, 180 million euros for sovereign cloud. How do we do that? Because you heard, this is not obvious to just say we want to buy sovereign cloud and we don't want the Americans to participate. We can't do that. So what we did was we turned sovereignty into a quality that can be assessed objectively. So we made a sovereignty framework based on 8 criteria that can be assessed. So turning sovereignty into something that can be measured and that you can actually assess, not just a political objective, that is what we did, and that is basically what is going to deliver the results. I'm very optimistic. We have 12 offers, and the results will be known in March. So that's my message here. We can do things even in the current legislative framework by turning sovereignty into a quality linked to the risks that we want to address as a CIO.
And this is super interesting, and I want to return to Thibaut to also develop these points. So a number of things you say, just to firm up the points. You are saying that, of course, you are thinking about procurement as a CIO, and this is your job, so it is efficiency of procurement, cost, and these quality criteria. And sovereignty isn't necessarily something that fits into that because it needs to actually meet these more tangible criteria. But then you talk about this crazy sort of, frankly, framework we have in Europe in which, indeed, I know this is the status quo, but if you are trying to put in a European preference, we are in breach of our own laws on non-discrimination. This is mind-blowing to anyone when you explain it to them, because in no other part of the world that I'm aware of, a preference for local is considered illegal. I mean, I have my American friends who were in DigiTrade, in trade in the US administration. And, you know, it is sounding weird to people elsewhere that somehow we are stuck in this world in which somehow we are exposed to discrimination lawsuits because we, unlike the rest of the world, are just fair, like procure from anywhere and that's okay, that's fair. This is quite, I get, and it's very interesting, the way in which you're trying to essentially circumvent this restriction by putting on this quality criteria. So that's encouraging. Thibaut, can you please just give us your reaction to what you heard?
First, I think you're totally right. I mean, the Parliament will have an immense role in all of this because very often, you know, in Europe, we do industrial policy through legislation because in a way that's the best manner to coordinate the efforts of member states. And what I was describing in this tech package will go through legislation. We hope the Parliament will be as fast as possible because very often this is also a critical issue. And we also count on you on the budget because, you know, the Commission has made, I think, an ambitious proposal for the next budget, where tech, innovation and digital have a big you know, opportunity. We hope this will not be savaged through the negotiations. Just to react on what also Philippe said, because we are in the same boat and we work together actually on the criteria for this sovereignty you know, procurement. What he illustrates is also the problem that across Europe, public procurement occurs at many levels. And sometimes it's also frightening, you know, when you have to procure systems that have to be resilient, that have to deliver. You know, when there is a problem, you know, the CEOs will turn to you or the minister will turn to you. You will need to show that, you know, you've done a good job and you can, you know, make sure that everything works. So that's what I think that the large, most of the time, non-European providers are giving you. They are giving you a brand. They are, you know, reassuring. They are big. They have maybe, you know, a call center that you believe you can use. And that's also the kind of mental, you know, issue we have to address. We have to prove that European technology is just as good. And actually, it is.
It is.
And today, I mean, what is very important is that there are also ways to measure this, you know, and what we are going to propose in the Cloud and AI Development Act and in the open source strategy is to also analyze and make sure that we have criteria to measure, you know, the sovereignty element, the security element of what is proposed in the IT, and also, you know, to label solutions that match EU legislation. Let's not forget that we have a problem sometimes that, you know, privacy is not respected. You know, there are many problems with foreign technology that do not fit with, you know, our legal system. So we have to build this. But at the same time, we have to entrust providers. And just to your question, I would invite you to look at what Eurostack has done in terms of the catalog, but also I like the website European Alternatives that has been put together. It gives you really a very interesting list of companies in Europe that are delivering sovereign solutions. And I think that's what we should start doing. Raise awareness, you know, and there are many very, very good solutions. It's just that maybe you don't know them because you are used to work with the same old 3-4 elements. It's not the full story, and on the contrary, the more we use it, the better. And I think I see that CLARA CHAPPAZ is online. Maybe she can say something about this.
Why don't we bring it up?
The member states are actually moving. I mean, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, they just launched an initiative to use these open source and sovereign solutions in their ministries.
Yes, thank you. That's a great prompt. Can we see Clara on screen? Because Clara, hi. Sorry to keep you. I know you have. Sorry you can't be here in person. I know you have commitments in Paris, but it was important to hear your voice, and so I'm grateful that you are able to join us at least online. we'll go straight to you.
Sorry
and then
for not being with you.
No,
I'm happy to join online though.
thank you. So we'll go straight to other panelists immediately after, but I know you have to leave in 10 minutes. So indeed, as Thibaut says, the member states are absolutely partners in driving this transformation in all of this. It's not just something where we look at the Commission. And France indeed has been, needless to say, the first mover in terms of the narrative on sovereignty. It has been common currency in France to talk about sovereignty for quite some time. You've been co-organizing with the with Germany the big summit in Berlin, and then there's going to be a follow-up in Paris. And you're now kind of ambassador to the world of the French vision on digital and AI. Will you tell us where do you think things stand, taking on the post-Berlin, what will happen, and how is this kind of great statement of intentions that was made in Berlin possibly going to follow through in reality? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me join the discussion. Sorry, I can't be here physically, but it was great. I think the comment that was just made on how member states definitely should strengthen their voice on this topic and work closely with the Commission to, bring it forward. And this is definitely the voice that France has been taken for a while now. You're right. As an ambassador, this is definitely one of my missions to, make sure that we're heard across Europe and beyond, also building partnerships with other countries that are facing similar difficulties, where basically they're stuck between using tech and Asian technologies with all the dependencies that come with it. And when President Macron started talking about Europe digital autonomy, it was in the context 2017 of his vision and speech when it comes to Europe autonomy as a whole. And definitely back then it was probably not a concept that was that spread across. But moment after moment, later on, I think everyone, as it was rightly discussed on stage today, and especially over the last 12 months, I've realized that you can't build a strong Europe if you're not facing the dependencies that we also have when it comes to tech. In our daily life, it was really rightly described earlier on at work, and obviously as governments, we all depend on technologies that are made from abroad. The cloud market is like 80% depending on American companies. And we decided to address this challenge, first and foremost, really pushing into building capacity. Because it's great to talk about being less dependent, less reliant on foreign tech, but to do so, we need to have a very strong, vivid tech ecosystem in Europe, and that's how we really, under the leadership of our president, pushed for this idea of European tech ecosystem. In France, we call it French tech ecosystem. We've been pushing, helping through a lot of different fiscal measures, support our public investment bank, and really pushing for this agenda at European level, because this is the best way for us to be stronger, is to have our own alternative. And obviously also looking at how to protect our market for those companies to grow. So looking at during the French presidency, the regulation of DMA that was already described, DSA on certain extent is also a question obviously of how we want the big tech to behave in our markets. Having a framework that basically helps innovators, European innovators, to succeed, even in a world where you have big monopolies or duopolies or multipolies who are basically having a lot of strengths to deploy new technologies in the market because they're already in dominant position. And I think what we've seen over the last 12, 18 months is that this concept has become a priority for more and more member states. I know in the next roundtable you also have the Minister of Poland. We've talked about that quite a while when I was in my former role. And when we hosted France and Germany, this European Digital Summit, I think strong ways that member states can get more involved and really shape this agenda, as it was rightly said, to promote it and to work with the Commission in bringing it forward. The simple fact that the summit in Berlin was called the Sovereignty Summit, I think is already a strong signal, because I don't think that word was used so much when it comes to tech before. And what came out of the summit, and some of it you already discussed, but is to reinforce the collaboration between member states on AI to build capacity in this technology. I'm thinking, for example, of the deal between Mistral and SAP to really push for a strong voice when it comes to unleashing the progress of our companies through, simplification of the regulation, which is not an agenda for sovereignty per se, but which is fundamental if we want our companies to play the same roles. They cannot be, hindered by some of the complexities that is surrounding our market. And obviously guarantee our sovereignty also means being stronger when it comes to assessing, protecting ourselves from cybersecurity risks, from extraterritorial regulation. I think it was very rightly said, and this is something that France has been pushing for very strongly for a while, to do it at European level, because this is the only way it also gives depth, market depth to our companies. And it was also pointed out, but in this work, there was also a big push towards making open source solutions, which are more easily transposable, more easily auditable, more easily spread across some of our major focus. So the creation of the edict that was mentioned just before. We think that's also an area where building digital commons for Europe is so important when we are addressing those challenges. So this is like some of the big milestones that were made. Obviously, this is you're not going to solve this challenge just by hosting a summit. I think you're changing it, but also what you're doing today by continuing the conversation, engaging member states, working closely with the Commission, and following up on the summit. There will be a lot of different events 2026 that I think will reinforce our European narrative when it comes to not accept those dependencies and building alternative. That France is hosting the presidency of G7. So this is part of the agenda that we'll discuss with the different leaders, and how to diffuse the technology in our economy, but also how to build our own autonomous capacity. There is an Indian AI summit in just a few weeks, following up on the Paris AI summit that happened last year. I think this is also, and obviously in the context of the big India-Europe deal, commercial deal that was signed yesterday, a very strong moment of importance for us, European member states and Europe overall, to say we're not going to do that alone. We have to find like-minded partners and build capacity together. And definitely India is a big partner of Europe. It's true for commercially speaking overall, but it's also true for technology. And this summit will provide us, and I know a lot of member states will be here, an opportunity to further develop this cooperation. And there is also an African summit, Africa Forward Summit, in May in Nairobi, where we're going to continue pushing this agenda. Because again, this is not just a question that Europe is facing, but I think this is a question where Europe can have the leadership to say, hey, let's define what we mean by sovereignty, work together to achieve it, and open and work with different collaborations to build also markets, avenues for our company to develop, grow, and bring us this autonomy.
Wonderful, and I'm glad that we managed to hear your voice. I know you have to leave very shortly, but I appreciate very much the emphasis on demand and working together with industry and the multiplicity of things you're doing. In France, I was on Monday in Bercy, and there was a big initiative there on digital sovereignty. Before giving the last word on this segment to Aura, who is such a great speaker, and she's going to just leave us on a high note, I'm sure. I want to just briefly go back to Philippe, and then we'll talk to the rest of our great speakers. Philippe, I want to pick up one of the things you said, because of course your example of the, you know, the journal versus the coffee and tea is one that talks about essential user cases, right? We have different user cases, and your proposition is, you know, there will be user cases where there is the need for functionalities that are not necessarily yet there, or I worry a lot about them. But there are a lot of user cases where the shift should be happening, should be possible. We are not without the capabilities to do it. What do you think? I realize you, of course, are the Commission, but this is a broader question. What does it take to move across the piece? But there are things that can be done now for Europeans to shift to procuring European stuff.
You know, what's holding us back is not the Americans or the hyperscalers. We are holding ourselves back. And I give you an example. I met my colleague CIOs of the member states I think it was in September in Denmark with the presidency. And I was shocked because a number of them said, look, we can't actually really do cloud because our data, our public data, needs to be in our member state, needs to be in our own country. So we are actually still thinking, yes, we are still thinking national. We are not thinking European there. And how can we actually build something that is meaningful at a world scale when we are actually fragmenting ourselves over 27 markets? I believe that we have forgotten our own history. Do you know the concept of shared sovereignty? It was invented in the 50s by Jean Monnet, when we introduced, basically, when we started the precursor of the European Commission, by putting coal and steel under supranational control. And the idea of shared sovereignty was that if we have 27 distributed pieces of sovereignty, that it doesn't mean anything, because sovereignty is about the ability to decide and act. It's like my teenage children. They all like to decide, but they are absolutely incapable of acting. So can we please go back to our roots and the original idea of Europe? Think about this concept of shared sovereignty instead of going back to our 27 markets with barriers between them. And just my last word is actually a quote from Jean Monnet. When he was in the United States in the 50s, and a journalist asked him the question, so this Europe that you want to build, this is because you're scared of the Soviet Union. That was the question. And you know what he said? I'm going to read it. The Europe we are creating is not born out of fear. It results from the confidence we have in ourselves and our common capabilities. That's what he said in the 50s. Can we please remember our own history?
Very good. And we are wrapping up, but as I said, I look to our final rousing segment, and then we move to DARIUSZ, who I know needs to leave.
My mic is off. Okay, I come from a Finnish army. I was trained there in the Finnish Air Force and in Navy 20 years back, so yes, I'm old. But you know, if I would ask a colleague here on the streets of Belgium that, you know, would you go and fight for the European border? There will be a hesitation. If you ask the same question in Finland, there is absolutely no hesitation. I always said that I would never date a boy who didn't go to the army, so didn't fly well in the international scene, but yeah. Anyway, but that's something that, you know, defines us in Europe, that we don't have a common nominator when it comes to enemies. I cannot say that Russia is the same thing for everyone. For me, it's of course a crucial element, but if you're asking from people from Portugal or Ireland, it's not the same thing. But what is the common nominator here in the technological sovereignty is that kill switch will happen to anyone, in Ireland, in Romania, in Luxembourg. When Trump decides that he will cut access to the US services, he will cut access to the US services. And it will be a blackout for everyone here. So I know that there is in Germany, there are many actually areas who chose already European tech. In Finland as well, actually in Belgium also. So I think that will be a common nominator. Do we need that kind of a crisis that we normally do? migration crisis, financial crisis, that we actually understand how crucial this is. It is for our defense sector, it is for our private sector, and why Ukraine is so successful now with drones and high-tech, it's because of Silicon Valley companies' data. So let's start treating our data as a critical raw material. Let's enable that to our own companies. Let's cut access to the US companies, and let's be proud of our European tech, and let's start using European tech.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I will ask DARIUSZ to join us, and then Michael, and then Christina, and then also Tim. So we will not overcrowd the stage. We flipped the order of things, and I thank DARIUSZ in particular for the patience. He was supposed to be speaking first in this segment, and because of various...
The Commission has disrupted our panel. It happens sometimes.
So please join us. Christina is valiantly stepping in for Germany. Then and Tim, you come up as well, so we don't have to do too many switches. So let me start with you, DARIUSZ. So of course, Poland held the presidency of the Union before, and you had early on sovereignty events in Poland, as well as, later on further things. And when I met you in Poland, indeed in Warsaw, it was after the end of your time, and I remember you cheekily said you were relieved that your time was over because you now could be candid and open about what you'd been experiencing while being, of course, in the presidency. But more seriously, of course, Poland has been working closely with France and Germany, other member states, Denmark, and so on. And there is an incredible tech scene in Poland, which is amazing. Everyone, Americans I know, go to Warsaw and they are mind blown about what's happening there in terms of startups and activity, amazing stuff. So how do you actually view at this point this drive towards sovereignty? Do you think it's happening? What's going on over there?
So first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you, Christina, for all your support during our presidency. Because the discussion about digital sovereignty, I believe, started here in such a room during previous conferences organized by you. So I'm really grateful about it. And I experienced that during our presidency, two great topics appeared. First, I mean simplification, second, digital sovereignty. And after we've published our presidency report on simplification, we've seen that many of those conclusions from our paper appeared in the Commission's proposal. In terms of digital sovereignty, we've seen great initiatives by Austrians, by French and Germans afterwards. And now we had great discussions, great negotiations. Was the definition of digital sovereignty, couple of versions, etc. But we need to act right now. And I believe that last year we had a chance to do it in reality. We had the first Commission's proposal on AI gigafactories. First applications made in June. And then we've seen a hope throughout our business ecosystem that finally we'll have initiative where the states will start cooperate with businesses. We will build consortia all across Europe. So we did. Poland has built a large consortium of Baltic AI Gigafactory with Czechia, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and more than 270 companies from those countries. So we see that it's possible. Unfortunately, Commission made some amendments in December, changing the way how gigafactories will be built in the European Union. However, I still I do hope that there is still a room to make it better than we now expect that it will be made. So we see that such infrastructure initiatives which are bold, which are civilizational, are possible. And I believe that we need to go in that direction, remembering about our legislative framework as well. Because I do not see many new pieces of regulations as exactly investment friendly. As it was mentioned before, that the Cloud and AI Development Act will be full of recognizing our sovereignty and how our companies are available to build in Europe. So if it is, I believe we do not need legislation for that. We just need to have another investment strategy. And that's our position right now after our presidency, when we can merge our experience with our also fresh look on the events, that we need to simplify in reality, that we need to build the coherent legal system, because we need to have those strong foundations to build infrastructure investment like AI gigafactories. So we need to remember that, and we need to do this simultaneously. Because we need to remember that Ursula von der Leyen's speech in Paris, which we all probably remember, to start working with businesses and build bold investments, it was almost a year ago. So now we need to really have some concrete actions on the table. That's why, alongside with France, Germany, Denmark, Estonia, Czechia, Spain, Sweden, and other countries, we made a statement on gigafactories to be more ambitious, to be faster. And that's why I do hope that in following weeks we'll be more ambitious and faster in such investment.
So how more ambitious and faster? What do you see as holding things back?
I believe that the proposal issued by the Commission in June last year was wonderful, because the idea to work together, to have a joint initiative between member states and businesses, that's the key what we need. Because we need to have a better cooperation between state and businesses, because in the European Union, we must be clear, somewhere we are lacking capital, like in Poland, for example. Somewhere we are not eager to invest in risky investments, as in the US, for example. That's why we need to have member states to guarantee those investments, member states to give incentives, like in consortia, like we've managed to have agreement with Czechia, to build together, to split costs, to have the largest AI infrastructure in this region. And that's why I believe this is the direction we need to go further. That's why I still do hope that we can be back on the track in this kind of investment.
And when I discussed this with you in the past, I mean, you were very much clear that this is not about subsidies. It is about guaranteeing demand, pre-procurement, and sharing the cost, which is something that really needs to come to the forefront, because the private sector doesn't necessarily need subsidies. If demand is there,
yeah, if demand and guarantees from the member states are there, they need to be, they need to feel safe about their businesses. As we know from many economic papers, European businesses are not such risk takers as companies from another continent. So that's why the role of member states needs to be larger than in those countries more risk taking.
Right, wonderful. I know you have to leave shortly, so I release you if you really need to leave, but I want to turn to Christina, who is, of course, at the core of the discussion of all these issues on sovereignty and the follow-up in Germany. You were, of course, very involved in the huge effort that went into organizing the summit. It was a great success, recognized by all. It was a big production, and it had a lot of industry on the stage. There were cloud, there was connectivity, there was a lot. It wasn't just institutions. So there was quite a lot of clear intention. We also know that, Germany because it has a lot of large industry. At the level of industrial complexes has been more reluctant to necessarily commit to sovereignty. It is a slow pace, and we'll discuss also why with Tim. But give us your sentiment for where things are after the summit, what's happening, a bit along the line of DARIUSZ as well.
Yes, so first of all, greetings from Marco, my Director General, who should be here, but who's, well, ill in January. You know, cold and flus are coming, and yes, so sorry. So
wonderful
happy,
you could step up.
Happy to represent him. For us, the summit, CLARA CHAPPAZ was also referring and reporting about it, was a starting point because as DARIUSZ just mentioned, we saw in the last year big, new shift to sovereignty by the Commission, by the Parliament, the report that was just adopted last week and elaborated last year by the members of Parliament. Of course, it was what happened with the US administration. But to be honest, we had the experience also from the past with our global partners in Asia and the US, what happened there. But now, with this geopolitical influence, the need was even more obvious. So we were happy to organize this European summit with our French colleagues, and actually it was a big success for us, not because it was publicly received, but because all our colleagues from the member states, so the former presidency, the Danish colleagues participated, and there was almost all digital ministers without having an active part in this summit, and showed the need to work on digital sovereignty. So I was very pleased when we go back to the roots of the EU, to the shared sovereignty and to the idea to join forces, and that was exactly the message we wanted to set with the summit. But now the work is starting. And DARIUSZ, you also mentioned the effort of our Austrian colleagues with the declaration on sovereignty. But there, when it's getting concrete, we do see that the discussion is complex. And with all the initiatives coming along now by the Commission, as for example the CARDA or the AI gigafactories, we see that we do need a common understanding what we mean by sovereignty. And that the worst thing that could happen is that all these definitions or criteria of sovereignty, because there are different council formations talking about or negotiating about it. There might be different directorates in the Commission having the pencil and working on it. So the worst thing that could happen is that we have different criteria and this different initiative. And that's what we are aiming for with the follow-up process from Berlin, to have a common set of criteria that's especially for the public sector, so for member states. But so I totally agree on what the Commissioner CIO said, that there are a lot of, especially in Germany, for example, there are the federal level, then the Länder level, then the counties, who all do their own procurement, and everyone has a slightly different understanding of what sovereignty is and of what product could be bought, and that makes it extremely hard for our SMEs and European companies to have an open market. So the idea of a common market in Europe with this sovereignty criteria is really crucial, at least from our point of view, to help them scale up and to find a strong position in the market. And that's what we are working on. We know that's a complex and hard process, but we are really optimistic to get to a good result and to implement it via the different initiatives.
So let me just follow up and take a leaf out of Dietmar's always very crisp description of how institutions work and the problems of coordinating. Of course, in Germany, you have different layers, as you said. You have the digital ministry, you have the economic ministry all involved in this process, then you have the state level. And indeed, we would have had Dirk Schröter, who is at Schleswig-Holstein and has actually implemented a shift away from Microsoft, and unfortunately, because of parliamentary commitments, couldn't be here. And we are still discussing what definition of sovereignty could be. But if you are, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate. If you are an SME in Europe and you are a company in Europe saying, oh my God, these guys are still discussing the definition, where am I going with this? How do I actually sell my product, which is really what I need to do, to whom? So, to the need for speed and so on, I know that coordinating, I imagine, I've never been in one, a huge, immense bureaucracy is a big effort. But, and I know that you and others share the sense of urgency. It feels like pushing a boulder uphill, right? And is it, I don't want to be negative about it, but what gives you hope that this is going to concretely help companies in Europe grow? Because unless we grow, we're talking.
Yeah, actually, maybe the first step would be not to call it definition. I think that's like the foundation for a harmonized market. And that's what the companies are waiting for, right? Because they don't know what product they can sell in Germany, in Denmark, or even within Germany. Because they slightly have to adapt their offer to every public tender. And one hand is like the public as customer, but there are only also a lot of SMEs really being, nervous and anxious, saying, okay, what should I do with my data? Everyone is talking to me now, you need AI in your business model, you have to transform yourself, so your big treasure is your data, and they are coming, especially to the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs, saying, so what should I do now? How do I uptake my data? Which cloud service should I take? So, and then they are also looking to the public services. Okay, what are you using? And if the answer is, so we are buying Microsoft, for example, they can, okay, then it might be a reliant offer. So don't talk about the definition, but let's talk about the circumstances for a harmonized market. I think that's crucial. That's
great, thank you. Let me turn to Michael. So Christina, of course, talks about geopolitical risk, and nowhere more than in Denmark, this is at the moment live. Of course, it's an issue that preoccupies us all in Europe, but of course in Denmark it must be felt very raw and very real. Of course, you also held the presidency, you had early events on funding European tech in Denmark. So Denmark is in the eye of the storm, and it is one of the countries that is accelerating its shift. You wanna tell us about that?
Sure thing. Thank you for inviting me. And I think we're in the storm. Yeah, that's maybe not so much today as just a week ago. So luckily for that.
He hasn't gone away.
No, not gone away, but not so much through social or X daily as it was just a few weeks ago. But it's still there, working on it. So that's also where we need European cooperation, and we are very grateful for that in Denmark. That, of course, also influences how we perceive digital sovereignty. I don't see it as, a completely different assessment of the situation, but a stronger sense of urgency. So I think even before, it's been there for a year with green and right, but even before that, there was a more sense that, okay, we are so embedded in tech from the US. Speaking of Microsoft, we are dependent. We are a highly digitized society. That's a very strong, it's a stronghold for us as a society, as an economy, as a very efficient public sector. But it's also a vulnerability. So there's two sides to the coin. So work is going on. For the first time ever, the government decided to set aside money dedicated specifically for digital sovereignty in Denmark. That would never ever have happened 10 years ago. So just a sign of the change of mind. It's not a huge amount, but it's there, and it's money to get work going. So we are now mapping where are our dependencies in order to make an action plan. We are looking at procurement within the European legislation that is now. How can we strengthen that in terms of portability, in terms of exit possibilities? We are also testing. We are doing pilots, so we have an aim to test new solutions on 10,000 users by 2030. It's not big, but it's a beginning to do things in practice, and that's also what influences in this. This is not about being completely independent or in isolation. It's about being more sovereign. It's not binary, either you're sovereign or not. It's about where are we today, and let's move in the right direction. That also leads us to always start with the most critical elements first. It's also an understanding that it's difficult. It's not something that you declare on a stage or on paper. It's something you do through concrete, specific, practical actions, and that takes time. It takes time to sort out the spaghetti ball. So it's not something you do overnight, but you have to start somewhere. Otherwise, you won't progress. So a pinch of realism is also what's going on. Also specifically on the local level in Denmark, the municipalities are actually doing something. The city of Copenhagen, they've screened, I think, 1,500 different services, identified the 150 most critical ones in order to take action on them. The second city in Aarhus, they have an aim of being 25% open source by 2030. So things are going on there. And then, of course, you mentioned the presidency. A key priority for us were digital competitiveness, which we see as a cornerstone in building sovereignty, because if we are to switch, we need to have European tech to switch to. We need that to be of high quality, low cost, because otherwise it will be a drain on our economy and our public services. So we really need to do everything we can that there's a better business case for European tech that will also spur private investments, that will also ensure that fewer startups buy a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley to scale a business. They stay in Europe. They stay European, we can actually buy their services down the line. So we need to reduce burdens, we need to make much more room for innovation, we need to spur investments, we need to, like gigafactories, the competitiveness fund, we need to, with public money, but especially with private money, really do something to improve European tech, to have the alternatives out there.
So let me thank you for that overview, and I think it's welcome. At the same time, when I hear government saying we are mapping where the weaknesses are, or like when I was in Paris on Monday, we are doing an observatoire. Oh, okay, let's just observe the problem a bit more and admire it and cuddle it before we do anything, because the sense is one of desperate urgency, right? I don't know if there's any more, I don't want to just somehow echo Aura, but I mean, my pitch is one of our hair is on fire. And I don't know if anyone kind of really follows this kind of meme, but this is the reality. So I hear you, and I hope that this is very much a sense of urgency, which is really kind of pushing through, because you know, business cannot wait, and we need to just do now, invest now. And we'll have a discussion this afternoon about what is changing in the sentiment of investors that is driving more towards Europe. So we are not just, so private capital is shifting, not just relying on the state. But at this point, I want to turn to my right and involve Tim in the discussion. So Tim, I'm particularly happy, of course, that he's here, because he's the voice for our purposes today of big European industrial group, Mercedes-Benz, a total hero and giant of European industry. And the reason I'm happy he's here is because Mercedes actually proactively reached out to Eurostat to have a discussion about what alternatives existed that they could consider for their own pretty sophisticated user cases. And so that sparked the discussion, and I would like Tim to, without going, of course, into any details on where things are, but just lay out. We've been talking to government, we'll be talking to the supply side, but you are the representative of demand. So you are looking for what in terms of shifting your procurement to European solution? Are you seeing that these solutions exist? Are solutions coming forward that you can use? What's missing? What advice do you give to the people in the industry, in the room, about how they can help you actually sign a contract? Take it away.
Thank you very much, Christina. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, I really much appreciate, and it gives a lot of energy to be with such energetic and intelligent people talking about this topic. So, looking at Mercedes, tomorrow is our 140 years anniversary celebration. And I'm looking forward to much more celebrations in future. That's what motivates me to be here. What motivates Mercedes to look in the field of sovereignty? You all know we are under pressure from a lot of sides. So if it is the exposure to US Cloud Act, that's not a theoretical thing at all. You can look it up publicly in the internet how many cases there are, how much data is transferred to the US. We have the situation that we have tariffs and taxes in place, which bother us a lot. We have the situation that we have tech restrictions. If it is chips in manufacturing missing, so the availability, if it is the quality of chips we get from the world, which we can put to our cars, that is really putting pressure on us. And we reacted and created a first response plan. How can we be more resilient in future? And European sovereignty and European sovereign solutions is one point in this action plan. And of course, Christina, I hear you now saying, action plan, okay, but what are the actions? So how much value is in an action plan if you put it into your drawer and take it out if something happens, and you put it again in if situation relaxes a bit? We analyzed all of our workloads. You can imagine maybe not 140 years of IT solutions, but more like 30, 40 years of IT solutions. We have a big heritage, but we analyzed our whole workload. And we analyzed it for data sensitivity. We analyzed it for exposure to US Cloud Act. We analyzed it also for operational fit to European sovereignty. And then I'm coming to the point. We had this nice analogy of Microsoft. You have a cup of spaghetti, right? You grab into it, and you have the whole bunch. How does it feel to work with European sovereign solutions? It's like a cup of rice, uncooked rice. You grab in, you pull it out, and you have nothing in your hand. That's what we experience as enterprise company with European sovereign solutions. And it doesn't mean that these solutions are bad. We have really great technology, even AWS, GCP, Azure, they all use it. They integrate it into their services, put something on top, and especially put the glue to it. And the glue is the magic for the enterprise companies. We have more than 8,000 applications after several years of tremendous efforts in standardizing, harmonizing, reducing application landscape. We can't afford to put all the glue inside on our own. That needs to be the vertical integration of the solution, which need to be there for us to use. And that's a huge challenge. And maybe one second point, which is scalability. I'm talking for Mercedes, and we are committed to continue with our international partners, also Microsoft, AWS, because also we don't compromise on user experience. We can't deliver live traffic services. You might know it if you have driven a Mercedes-Benz. A car in front, like 100, 200 meters in front on the highway, is heavily braking. You directly get the prompt to the car. Be careful, someone is braking in front. We can't do this in Texas with European sovereign solutions. So we need a global setup. And that's what I did not hear today. We were looking more from the governmental perspective, public sector perspective on it. But as a global enterprise, I need solutions which work globally. And that's what we heard a lot of negative things about AWS, GCP, Azure. But that's what they do. They support us worldwide, even to the extent they can in China. And that's what is missing in the solutions we see here for European sovereign.
So this is a great introduction, and I want to dig deeper into this because I think that people need to hear it, and then if somebody wants to jump up and say something in response, you can. But what you say is so salient because I had multiple discussions with Mercedes who are very well intended and very well meaning in support of sovereignty. And what he describes as the glue, if I can put it in a different way, is essentially that Europe has got multiple opportunities to offer cloud. We have lots of software, we have AI, but what he's talking about, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it is my interpretation of what I've seen. A customer needs an integrated offer that is integrated not just technologically, but also commercially. If I have to stitch together 5 different offerings, who is the partner responsible for this bit going wrong, this bit going wrong? And this is indeed what Americans have perfected. And by the way, I don't think that, I know there are some in the room, there is no anti-American sentiment. I know the Americans are great at what they do. Right? And it isn't about pushing them out or just getting rid of them in any shape or form. They're great, they filled in a vacuum that we as Europeans left. So how is it going to happen that this creation of solution, because on the one side, if I'm a supplier, I'm thinking I'm not going to do this kind of work that's expensive spontaneously unless there is the prospect of selling my product. So this sounds like very much something where demand and supply needs to work together. You, and Mercedes as an example, need to say, I have these loads, I have these needs, you will go off and provide to me something that looks like this. And if you do, I consider buying you. And then the work needs to be done by the industry in an iterative way. Is that the answer?
Well, of course, we have discussed also this, but we as Mercedes-Benz, we are ready to also go a step. And we know that also demand needs to be created. And we would be ready to start with a limited amount of workload to put to European sovereign solutions. We also did the exercise of identifying, having this framework, what would be changed, what would be moved. We are ready to do it, but we are not finding the really good solutions we are aiming for. But anyway, we talked about it also yesterday, that demand needs to be created, and also we can play our role from the industry to create the demand. And maybe this is one part of the answer. Let me also answer what we don't need anymore. Because looking at all the initiatives around European sovereign clouds and infrastructure and AI services, I cannot count how many questionnaires I have filled in the last 2 years. If you don't want me to put them into Gemini to answer them, then stop sending these questionnaires, but act on this. And if you want to move the food, fine. And of course, it needs to take care that we work on our cooking skills, that the rice is cooked and at least a bit of sticky, that we can consume it.
This is great. And indeed, your reference to that, I couldn't believe that the Commission sent around a sort of plea for signing a letter on Google. And you say, oh, we want more sovereignty, sign Google. I thought it was weird and bizarre. I think that we've had a great discussion. We are almost at time. I will release you all for lunch, which is waiting outside. But, and also, Luis, No ranting, no stuff like that. Just to the point. Can we send a microphone to these two people? So one is there, over there. Let's start from there, but we only have 5 minutes. Okay. Why not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, citizens. My name is Angelos Karlaftis. I'm very glad I'm seeing the narrative begins to change after 20 years here. I'm supporting the European independence, not autonomy. Of course, we are speaking for sovereignty, and the questions are a lot. Of course, we have to remember the history of ours, as the previous speaker told, but in this history is also the Treaty of 1954 for the creation of the European Defence Community. The question is, I'm representing here the Open Codex community, which is different from the Linux environment, because if we want to speak in the open source for sovereignty, we have to change the ideas which are under the Linux corporation. Organization, corporation, because it's Microsoft again. So the second thing is, do you believe we can have a sovereignty on the data without our own internet, the CNET, as I'm proposing from 2010? The CNET is the solution for everything and for the artificial intelligence, which is very dangerous, being controlled by one internet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Antoine, do you want to take the microphone over there?
Yes, thanks a lot. Just a question for Tim, indeed. Of course, I talked about glue and about global support. And of course, there is no real EU cloud provider which can support that. And so how do you see a path or roadmap to a potential EU solution which could be interesting for Mercedes?
Well, you can continue that over lunch. And anyone else who has... I thought that, Luis, why don't you grab a microphone from here? Because I don't have one to give you. Yeah, you wanted to say something.
Thank you. Then the second question on the hold-up. So Tim, how do you think...
It's work. They will do it.
Okay, so how do you think of, if you are on Amazon Web Services, you talked about the Cloud Act, kind of being able to pull data from Europe.
Orange mic.
How do you think of hold-up on Amazon Web Services? How do you ensure that people talked about kill switch, you talked about extracting data back. How do you ensure that the training, the implementation, all of that is basically owned by you and it's not pulled back? What's your guarantee and how do you feel about that move?
So there's not the one answer to all of our workloads. I assume you refer to more sensitive and critical workloads. Then the answer is, of course, there are possibilities like bring your own key, hold your own key to encrypt the data. But we all know that there are ways to work around it. We closely cooperate with Microsoft and AWS, and we have achieved some improvements in the technologies to hold our own keys and not cache it in their infrastructure. But at least for some very critical workloads, we still have our on-premises data center, where we also use US tech and software inside, we have to say, yeah. But physically, we would be able to disconnect it, of course, so that kill switch wouldn't work.
Do you have something to say? You have your hand up. Okay, can you come forward so we give you a microphone because there isn't one. Oh, somebody's bringing it. Okay. Okay. Orange one.
Thank you. My name is Alex Tursky, Post-Platons Foundation from Netherlands. I just have a good news that we have in Netherlands actually developed the solution for all these problems.
Okay. Can we all go home? Good. No need to worry about it.
Yeah,
talk to him.
It's quite simple. We simply separate data from platforms. So we developed the whole solution for 5 years as part of European Data Space Project. Last year, we were funded as a non-for-profit by private investors. And we launched the whole prototype together with the Ministry of Economics and Agriculture, etc. Okay. And this year, our consortium of investors actually are going to deliver the project for governments so that you can switch from Microsoft Office, etc., to a lot of small solutions. And we also implement in agricultural sector of Netherlands, cultural heritage, etc. So actually it exists and it's working. It's just a good news.
Very good.
I'm ready to answer questions.
Very good, very good. Kudos. So I think I need to wrap up at this point, but please do reach out to the speakers in the lunch, which starts now. I just want to say, to me, this was the start of the day, and of course we focus very much on digital, but I think we did manage to showcase the various components of this complex picture. We have governments, we have the Commission, we have the Parliament, we have industry. What we didn't have on this panel was the actual suppliers. Of course, as being animating Eurostack, don't I know them? Don't I know what they think and what they do? But I didn't want necessarily to, there'd be dozens who'd be willing to be here and talk about what they can do and why they're good at what they do. So let's take that as read. We will continue through the day with various things because, of course, digital goes into defense, into industry, and then we'll talk about startups, and then we'll talk about regulation and antitrust. So stick with us. Now go out, have lunch, back in 40 minutes. Thank you very much.